Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Dotson. I'm the program coordinator and founder of Highland Park Poetry and your host for Poetry Today. I'm really pleased to have Leonard Lund with me today. Leonard has been writing since the early 60s. His poetry has appeared in 59 journals and magazines and in 30 anthologies. Len is the author of 9 published chapbooks, with others in progress. 2 collections are circulating. He's regularly found in the Chicago area at Waiting for the Bus, Traveling Molly's, Lit by the Bridge, and Waterline Writers, as well as venues in Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Wow, I stopped. When are you going to stop counting? I guess 59 journals and 30 anthologies.
I counted actually as a joke. I approached Nina Corwin from Traveling Molly's and said, I'd like to feature, here's my CV. And she says, well, where have you been published? And I said, do you want the whole list or do you want and I went and counted them. just to see,
And she was suitably impressed
and
said, okay, come on.
Yes, yes, so I'll be doing that in December.
Oh, wonderful, okay. And are they at one location in Oak Park, or is
yes.
it?
They have settled on the Buzz Cafe right now.
Okay.
In Oak Park. They have been, in the 3 years I've been reading with them, they've been in 3 different locations before that.
Okay. Well, hence the traveling part of the,
yes.
the show's description.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I hope that goes really well and that you have a big audience.
I do too.
It's always hard to get audience, especially if you're going into an area where people aren't familiar with you.
Yes.
What do you have a broad network of people in the Midwest that come out to hear you specifically, or do you just always?
I have all the people that I know from the various places I read in the Chicago area, in the suburbs. Beyond that, people don't very often travel any great distances to hear somebody else read.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And it's the way poetry works.
Quite eager to travel. To read.
Yeah, it's a new audience.
Okay.
Okay, it's a chance to see people that I know secondhand or through social media and actually get to meet people. And it's a chance to go out on the road.
Well, yeah, you mentioned social media. It's funny because I've become acquainted with several poets, some in the Chicago area, but even some like in the Washington State, whom I've never met personally, but I feel, gosh, we're friends on Facebook now. I feel like I know them,
Yes.
you know, and I read their books, and,
Yes.
and hopefully they read mine. So that's the social media is certainly a benefit for.
Oh yes, yes. It's so much different from the pre-Facebook, pre-general social media days, both as an author and as somebody looking for connections with people. It used to be that you would submit a piece of poetry in an envelope to somebody that you would never see and might or might not ever hear back from.
Well, it's
Whereas
still similar.
Now it's similar, but you know who all those people are as far as being able to know who to send to.
That's true.
Whereas, Crab Orchard Review was a name. You didn't know anything about it. And submission was a blind process. Everything that I'm doing in the Chicago area, and actually everything I'm doing as a poet on the stage, is because of one notice on social media back in 2013 that Donna Voyer was reading at the launch of her newest book. And I said, just for the heck of it, I want to go see what this is all about. And Donna introduced me to 2 people who introduced me to a number of people who were holding venues in the city. And
wow,
it
and
just
it's
grows.
A small world, because I just met Donna for the first time last month. We facilitated a workshop for poets and patrons on incorporating fairy tales, myths, and legends in your writing.
She's a wonderful
and
writer.
She was fabulous. I really
Yes.
enjoyed meeting her. So, well, that speaks very highly of you. So,
well, thank you.
But let's get a taste of your poetry before we delve too much into.
Okay. So Careless of Themselves is a collection of war or anti-war poems that Writing Knights Press put out back in 2014. And this one, I suppose, is a combination both of a love poem and a war song in the same place. 11 November. In a very different place, I called you just to hear your voice. You asked how I knew you needed me to talk to, and to be honest, I didn't. Until you told me of your mourning, the abortion, the heartache of loneliness. Later, I listened to Paul Simon as he sang about the day, and to Penny Evans as she mourned one death among 60,000 in Southeast Asia. It was a choice you made, and it's odd how it eclipsed what men such as I had done in those different places.
Well, I haven't, when I'm not here doing poetry, I assist Mayor Rotering of the city of Highland Park in coordinating the local observances of Veterans Day and Memorial Day. And so when you said November 11th, I was like, I was just writing a blurb about that. Okay,
Yes.
so wow, okay.
Yeah, a friend called me that day and said, here's what's going on in my life.
Wow.
So it all sort of worked together.
Oh. Well, and you've been writing for a long time.
Yes.
Since the early 60s. So obviously the Vietnam War was a big part of your life at that time. Was that, did you start writing war poems at that time? No. That came.
I started writing as a junior in high school back in '64. And at that point, I'd been reading Sandburg for a couple of years. Carl Sandburg was my introduction to poetry outside of the classroom. His collection, Honey and Salt.
What induced you to pick it up?
I was the kid who didn't go to study hall.
Okay.
I had the permanent pass to the library to sit and read.
Okay.
Because they got tired of me sitting in study hall doing nothing.
Okay.
And the new bookshelf had the just released Honey and Salt on it. And I said, what the heck, we'll take a look at it.
Okay.
And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with Sandburg. And I fell in love with poetry in a lot of ways that the classroom never would have taught me.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I didn't read this. In your bio statement continued. You've got a BA and an MA in history and sociology from Northeastern Illinois, which degrees which you pursued after returning from the Navy.
Yeah.
And you emphasize that you never had a writing course.
Yeah. When I was in college the first time back in the mid-'60s, there were no creative writing courses on campuses, especially not at a 1,200 student school down outside of Springfield, Illinois.
Okay.
There were no BFAs, no MFAs, no PhDs in writing, and there generally weren't any classes about writing. In college, we studied, in my freshman year, Alberto Moravio, an Italian short story writer. That was the writing course on campus because Martha Hale wanted to teach Moravio's writing. And she was the professor in charge of the English department. She also became one of my mentors, and I was very pleased with that relationship and what it did for me. And sadly, she's not with us anymore. But I've outlived them.
Your mentors, yeah, that's the
Yes.
thing about them. If they're older than you are, they, as you age, so do they, and we don't all live forever. But so, what was the springboard then for that first important encounter with Carl Sandburg, and then saying, I could do that? How did that happen? Or has there been an evolution, I guess I should say?
I wrote my first short story when I was 5 years old. It was one sentence long, and it was written in crayon on the back of the headboard of my bed, so my parents wouldn't yell at me for writing it. But, so, I mean, I've been a writer. I've been in love with words as far back as I can remember.
Wow.
And Sandburg opened up a new world of words, a new way of putting words together. grabbing these packs of animals that just roam around in our ears and saying, okay, this is where you're going to fit, this is how you're going to get along. After that, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, a number of the beats, Corso, a number of very obscure, strange people like Adam Ant, who wrote Little Johnny and His Atomic Bomb.
Okay.
Very bizarre chapbook of poetry, but all of this just made me say, yeah, this is how words fit together. They don't have to rhyme. You don't have to read them in this particular cadence. And you can say things about things. You can say things with these words that people are interested in listening to.
Well, maybe we should hear some more.
Okay, speaking of Sandburg, rereading Sandburg. There are stories born to be remembered, and young men read them on the train in the early morning, while old men rock next to them dreaming of youth. There are stories that lose their way early or late, and no matter how they're called for in the middle of the night, never quite find their way back from the forest, never quite grow up. There are stories that are rewritten years later when the language they speak is extinct and mean as much as when they were born. There are stories set to paper for one special woman, and maybe she keeps them in a drawer with old photos, and maybe she spills the morning coffee on them and throws them away already forgotten.
I suppose that's every artist's anxiety.
Oh, I suppose. I'm old enough that I've stopped worrying about whether people remember what I write or not. There's nothing I can control about it. I have people who seem quite happy to see me and hear me read, and that's satisfaction enough
Now,
there.
when did you start doing this circuit of readings?
Well, I ran into Donna in 2013. November of 2013, I, on Donna's advice, went and heard some readings at Waiting for the Bus, which was at Powell's Books on the UIC campus back then, and met David Hargaton, who runs that, and he encouraged me to start reading at his venue. And people at that venue said, hey, have you considered going to this one? Have you considered going to that one? And so now I've got 4 that I stick with primarily.
Yeah. Well, we're really glad that Highland Park Poetry is going to have you this weekend.
I am
Unfortunately,
too.
this is
I am
the type
too.
of thing where, you know, we film this now, but it won't be aired until after you've actually already been here.
okay.
So it's sort of like time travel.
Sure.
You know, people will have to go back in time in order to see you. So we're hoping that we're
It's
sending out
magic.
enough, right? We're sending out enough positive energy in the universe that they'll all come
Yeah.
scrambling out to Madame Zuzu's to hear you read.
Good. I mean, poetry being magic, I think that's fitting.
Okay.
It's a form of time travel. It's a form of astral projection. I can reach somebody in the middle of the day in Australia with my words without leaving Chicago. And I do on occasion. I have some very good friends there that I've made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Through poetry?
Through poetry.
Okay.
They write exclusively tanka and haiku, and they forgive me my free verse. And the world is fine. The world is fine. But, so yeah, it's a form of magic. It's a form of travel.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, when we were conversing before the show started, we were talking about your relationship with your publisher, since you've worked with Writing Nights. Is that
Writing Nights. yes.
Writing Nights? Do you want to talk about how you connected with them, or?
As Johnson, the publisher slash gopher slash everything for a small press, posted on Facebook that he wanted to hear from people who wanted to do what was called a foreplay, F-O-U-R play. Basically 4 pieces of poetry by people who hadn't been published widely or in chapbooks before. And I raised my hand and said, sure, I'm interested. And that's what I just read out of, was that first chapbook
Okay.
of mine. And I've done anthologies with him. I've done more chapbooks with him. We work well together. he understands what I'm trying to do as a poet, and I understand what his needs are as the operator of a small press. So we hit it off well. And I've had the pleasure of going out to Ohio and reading for him probably 3 or 4 times in the last
Where in
4
Ohio
years.
is?
Generally in the Cleveland area,
Okay.
straight out I-80.
Is there sort of a large community there, or?
Yeah, they're actually spread much like the Chicago community is in about, an hour and a half's radius.
Okay.
The Canton area, the Akron area, Cleveland itself. And then there are communities down in Dayton and Columbus, and all of the large cities. Being Ohio doesn't mean that they don't know poetry. There are some very good people there in terms of writers.
Cool.
I'm always happy to get out there and see them again.
Yeah. So was that connection perhaps with this publisher, though, that made you interested in traveling to Ohio to do readings and stuff, and check out the scene? And
yeah, when my second chapbook came out, Pictures of Another Day, Azriel asked me to come out and read from it as sort of a launch, although chapbooks generally don't have launches.
Yeah.
This one kind of did in the back of a coffee shop.
Okay.
And, it spread from there.
Wow. And now you've added Pennsylvania and Indiana to your. Do you do a circuit, or
no?
Is it just more by invitation,
it's more by invitation or because there is an event. Indiana, there's a thing that's called Small Prestivus that happens in Highland.
Oh, okay.
And I
William
read
Yarrow
there.
was mentioning that as well.
Yes, Bill and I both read there back in July this year, and
Okay.
I was there last year as well. Pennsylvania, there's been a thing, although it's gone into hiatus, called Snowetry, which is a day-long, from 10 in the morning till about midnight, series of people reading poetry
Wow, okay.
in the Erie area. And
Now, is this done in winter? Or?
yes,
Okay.
yes, it's like
hence the name. Okay,
January,
all right.
February, yeah, yeah.
Huddled around a fire,
Close.
Oh, really?
Close. I
Okay.
have read in some of the coldest basements in the world over on
Oh,
that
my
end of the
goodness.
country.
Okay.
Yes. Unheated basements in January.
Oh my goodness. Well, let's
But-
warm up with some more words.
Okay. Yeah. This is called Little Boxes. Grandpa, he asks, is that punk rock? No, child, I reply, those are the Kinks. They were British invasion. Oh? Online it says they were proto-punk. And I joke, is that like nouveau retro rockabilly? He doesn't get it, nor do I. There's something cosmic not so funny here, though I'm sure the gods are laughing. Where does it come from, this urge to segregate, classify, mystify? Blacks at that fountain, Jews at that part of the wall, Cubs versus Sox, and that side of the street is Canada. And just how the hell did Question Mark and the Mysterians beget Sid Vicious and the Velvet Underground?
Okay. I like that.
One of my loves is writing Poetry Month things, the 30-30s, 31-31s, where you write 30 poems in 30 days.
Wow, okay.
This was Azriel's 2013 National Poetry Month anthology. Okay, everything.
So it had 30
It had 30 of my poems. It had 30 of several people's poems. They were all written between April 1st and April 30th. And I've done 3 of those this year, which.
Oh, 3 months where
3
you're
months,
doing that.
yes.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, and so far.
Now, how do you approach that? I mean, do you give yourself prompts, or or do you just?
Well, yes, but I usually give myself prompts on a daily basis.
Okay.
Although I've been known to write 4 or 5 things in one day and then goof off for a few days.
Okay,
And catch up.
all right.
Nobody knows the difference. April, when I did my 3rd year of fundraising poems for St. Baldrick's, the children's cancer people. Okay, I can tell you about that.
Yeah, that sounds
my,
interesting.
My whole guiding premise there was acrostics, poems about pieces of art, about
Okay.
photographs I came across, things like that. June was all prose poems. And both of those months have produced books. July was things I found on Pinterest.
Okay.
But it works. It works.
Okay, so what was the process with Pinterest? That sounds.
I would find photographs, I would find articles, I would find things that just said, hey, you know,
Well, so you're
this wants
using
to be
it
a
as
poem.
a title, or you're using
more,
maybe
more,
the,
more as a key to release voices in my head that start putting
Okay.
words together. And
Did you
know.
credit Pinterest?
no, no. With the Poems Against Cancer 2016, I credited the artwork that I was
Okay.
working from.
All right.
But that's because the connection was much more
So
tight there.
now explain this fundraising
Yeah.
campaign. That sounds fascinating.
This year was the third year I've done it. My youngest granddaughter has done several head shaves for St. Baldrick's. Okay. And I decided that there was something I could do. My wife and I are both cancer survivors. My mother is, my mother-in-law. A lot of people we know are cancer survivors. And I said, okay, anybody wants to contribute $10 directly to St. Baldrick's. Doesn't go through me, it goes directly to them. I will send you a poem every day for 30 days in April in the email. You contribute $15, I'll give you a PDF of all these at the end of the month. And if you contribute $20, I will stitch the covers onto a chapbook for you
Okay.
that I print at home by myself and lay out myself and all that and send it to you. And people jump in and say, yeah, it's a worthwhile cause.
Very cool.
So,
like,
yeah.
say the first year, how many people did you get to, and compared to the, now?
I started with about 7 or 8 people, and right now there are between 15 and 20 after 3 years.
That's great.
So we've raised maybe $1,200-1,300 for St. Baldrick's, which for words on a page are
Yeah.
not a bad return.
Yeah.
Not a bad return.
Oh no, that's
Yeah.
very admirable. Wow. And I'm thinking, wow, that's what something should be doing. more
Yeah.
poets should be doing that.
Yeah.
That sounds like good.
People have looked at the books at places where I've been selling and said, poems about cancer? And I said, no, none of them are.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That it's just that the connection to cancer ends at the
At the donations.
The donation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting. I have heard similar things where people will create like their own, like you created a structure of, if you donate this, you get this, and X, Y, Z. And I've heard some poets where they'll engage the audience. So the more money you get,
Yes.
the more control you're. Like you could, if I donated $100, maybe I could suggest 3 words that you would have to use in a
Sure.
poem. or
Kristen
something.
Latour does that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
She's the one who opened that door for me.
Sort of created the model.
Yeah,
to-
yeah.
okay,
She
or
did it,
refined
if I remember right, she did it for an organization battling bullying.
Okay.
Okay. And, yeah, in my case, because I started this when I was working full-time, meaning 60 to 80 hours a lot of weeks at a university, I couldn't turn the process over to anybody else or invite anybody else into the process because I didn't know when I was going to write. I had
Yeah.
no idea what I was going to write. And so I kept control of it, and it worked well. So we
Yeah.
stayed there. What I do is for people like John Terrellnick down in Sydney, he always donates $50 and he gets 2 extra copies of the book to give to friends,
Yeah.
which works fine.
That's wonderful. Well, we're winding down, and I wondered if we could hear some more of your writing.
Certainly. What do we want to do here? Okay. This particular poem is driven in a way by social media that we've been
Oh.
talking about. A really good friend of mine, a tremendous poet in her own right, talks a lot about her relationship with her dead husband, who is still very much in her life. Okay, I mean, whether she believes in spirits or not, I don't know, but John is always there with her. Okay, and this comes from one of her conversations about while he was alive. Sur le pont d'Avignon, We danced under parking lot lights. It seemed the place. It seemed the moment to hold each other in a two-step, to whisper as our lips brushed of our love. This is how we lived, dancing without invitation or warning at a local food store grand opening in the parking lot. It's what we felt like. You wore Bermudas, t-shirt, boat shoes. I wore a poodle skirt, peasant blouse, Mary Jane's. We wore our love like nightlights on our sleeves because this is how we lived. People smiled, people clapped. Some seemed embarrassed, none joined in. And brief weeks later, you were gone. It's never not the place, not the moment.
Oh, wow, that is beautiful.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
and thank you for that. You know, sometimes I fear like when poets provide explanations that sometimes it's, but no, it actually enriched my understanding of the poem.
Good.
Hearing about
Good.
that, you know, the
That's what the
relationship
explanation should be.
yeah, right.
My first two mentors, Max Parmley as a senior in high school, and then Martha at McMurray, both told me that you should never have to explain the poem to a reader. You can discuss the background.
Right.
You can, even if you're crazy enough, talk about why you chose this word, but never explain what you wrote.
Yeah.
And I've tried to live by that.
Well, that was very good advice.
Oh, yes.
All these
Yes.
years later, yes, it
Yes.
still serves you very well. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
to share your poetry. I think we have time for one more. If you've got a short, maybe a
Something real short. Well, no longer than the others at any rate. It's called Elegy. Dig the small grave and place the smaller body so, just so. The chill May rain and the warm human tears falling on her head will serve for the ritual washing of this pup, barely 2 days old. Some future digger after truth, alien or human, kneeling with trowel and brush at this grave, will note in clear, careful script the wonder that a people would be so deliberate with the smallest of their God's creatures and so careless of themselves.
okay. Well, that is something that I always enjoy about poetry, and that's the surprise, the Cracker
Yes.
Jack surprise at the end that sometimes
Yes.
gets you. And that definitely, it definitely evoked memories of burying our favorite cat under
It
under the apple
comes
tree.
from burying a puppy.
Okay,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Oh wow. You know, and you mentioned, I didn't, you didn't mention, but you mentioned here in your bio also that you've been married to your high school sweetheart for 48 years, which is quite
Yes.
impressive. So obviously poetry has nothing to do with acting in Hollywood where people are married for about 10 minutes.
No, no.
And does your wife get tired of receiving poems as gifts, or do you?
She gets one poem a year.
Oh,
and
okay.
and that's on our anniversary.
Perfect.
And that is in the middle of National Poetry Month, so it's
Okay, so that's
it's
a
day
given.
it's a day where I know what my prompt is going to be. Yes.
That's good.
Yes.
That's like there was a New Yorker cartoon where it was Will Shakespeare, and it's Anne Hathaway's birthday, and she's like, "Oh, thanks, another sonnet."
Yes. Yes. Actually, most of what I write is about the outside world rather than anything internal to my own or to our world.
So not confessional.
Not intentionally confessional.
Yeah.
And even where it is, again, those mentors. If you're going to be confessional, make it universal.
Okay.
And so I try hard to do that. Nobody wants to hear my problems.